Hello everybody, welcome back to another Conversations with Projektor. Today we start with the topic, I changed my main filter plugins. Welcome to the stream everybody. I hope people are joining in and people are doing fine. We're just going to continue the same project that we worked on last stream. So this is a mixing project that I started. I did make some changes. As you can see, we're no longer looking at red tracks all over the place. That means that all of those mistakes or all of those things that I needed to change have been changed. The other thing that I changed is the transition filter on the kick and bass. So the transitions weren't going high enough for me. And that is because in this project, I don't know if you guys remember, but I recently changed, or not really recently, but in the last half year, I changed how I do filter transitions on kick and bass, away from linear phase, like filter sweeps, right, for the transition filter. Instead of using linear phase filters, I went with Simpleton, because it has such a low frequency that it can go to. November is when this happened. Here, this video over here. I discovered some new things about kick and bass filtering. And it talks about all of the filter racks that I have. And the new way that I'm doing it is through Simpleton, as you can see in here. It's the only FabFilter plugin that I have, but it's very good at what it does. But that meant that when I dragged in the filter rack, the new filter rack in this project before exporting, I just copied over the old automation on the new filter rack, which didn't work in that the ranges were different. So what happened was, it essentially had no filter transition on the kick and the bass in these areas over here. And now I've re-rendered that and I fixed that and it should be a lot better. Including this one over here, which I also had to re-render because it's part of the build. And I might need to re-render sounds as well that need fixing. And I might need to re-render more. I need to get used to having monitors. I'm not the kind of person that has like a standard mixing loudness. Maybe I should have that. I don't know or think about how like important that is. To be honest, I'm a bit quiet today, I think. Maybe the way that I should do it is just with the, because I have one of those rotary knobs that has like 8 sides to it, right? For those that know the Arturia Mini Fuse, its main control. It has a knob like this. This is the main volume. So what I can do just with the line, with this line over here and one of the flat sides of that, always make sure that one of the flat sides is like exactly upwards, I guess, like perpendicular to the like top of it. Just kind of like how it is here, where you just make sure that it's flat. That way I would always have like somewhat of a similar volume, because there's nothing else in my signal path apart from voice meter banana, which I no longer use this volume slider over here. I've stopped using that since I now have control of individual volumes for my headphones versus my speakers. Because it used to be the case that, especially during feedback streams, I would need to turn down my master level so that you guys would hear tracks at full volume, but if they were mastered for me, they would be way too loud to listen to. Yeah, I guess I need to get used to the fact that now I have monitors still. Like, I'm still in the process of getting used to them. This is my first mix, by the way, my first full mix on monitors. Even the track that is coming out soon on the 20th of March on Eclipse, I finished the master before I got my monitors. And I went back into it fairly early on in getting my monitors and made some like small changes to it. But listening to it now, it's slightly too bright, the track, like the hats are a little bit too bright, but it's already going out for release, right? So I cannot change it anymore. I cannot fix it anymore, in the sense that the distributor and all of the platforms that it needs to go to already kind of have the track in there. Which monitors do you have? I have Adam Audio's T7Vs. The 7-inch, I use the Adams A7. Yeah, this is the newer version of those. Essentially, it's the newer model that replaces the A line. Great detailed highs, but lacking in the lows. They are a little bit, although I think that with the way that I've been mixing or like analytically been working around my tracks, I can get used to that idea pretty quickly. And just the fact that I listen to a lot of music, like almost every day I try to listen to half an hour of professionally mixed music on my system.
I'm looking for Newman KH120 plus sub.
To be honest, I don't know anything about monitors. These are my first pair. They sound amazing. If somebody would tell me like it gets much better for monitors, I could say, yeah, that could be the case. And if somebody else would tell me these are the best monitors available for that price point, I would also believe that. Like, I don't know anything about it. And that being said, I'm in an untreated room off axis with one having a wall behind it and the other one doesn't. So I'm probably in the worst possible spot to even be judging my monitors. The main thing that I hear now is that like the stereo field is much better represented than it was on my speakers.
I'm personally not a fan of subwoofers because they play sub in mono even if your sub would accidentally be stereo, and subwoofers give you an extra crossover filter which could be an issue.
There's another problem that I heard with sub-bass frequencies. People say that it is better for your bass levels to have a lower volume representation of what the bass is actually doing than a higher volume, because too little bass is much more detrimental to your track than, or is much less detrimental to your track than too much bass, I guess, or the other way around, something like that. I saw like a short from, what's the Italian, that mixing engineer guy that does shorts? I might be able to find this. It's like an Italian mixing engineer. He's won like 11 Grammys. So he definitely knows what he's talking about. Luca Pretolesi. But anyway, in terms of the what he says, he is of the opinion that like a subwoofer is not essential even for dance music, because you tend to get used to the lack of bass, and overrepresentation of bass can cause a lot of problems as well, especially in an untreated room. Like in a treated room, things change, right? In a treated room, you just can get the perfect balance and you want the perfect flatness of the monitors, and that's what you should aim for. But in an untreated room, it's much more important that you know exactly what music is supposed to sound like on the system, rather than have the frequencies be represented as flat as possible, because you're never going to get there in an untreated room. I mean, one cannot function without the other, yeah. At the end of the day, that's how it works. It's obviously better to have proper monitors as opposed to the speakers like I had before, but just getting monitors won't magically solve all of your issues. That being said, as I said, I noticed that the stereo field just gets a lot better on the monitors. That's the biggest increase in quality for me. Obviously, the sound is also amazing, but just learning the exact stereo field of all of my sounds, I've been going back into a lot of production projects and already said like, oh, this is too wide, this is too narrow. It's much better to judge that on the monitors than it was on my old speakers. Also because my old speakers used to move all the time. Like, they would sound always the similar, but like I would touch it and it would slightly rotate. I had one of the speakers, you would need to put your headphones in there. So anytime I put my headphones in, I would also slightly move it. And already that is detrimental to the stereo field like that you get from it.
Production terminology problems.
There are studio monitors and there is monitors these you use to see the DAW. Yeah. Do I use like screens? Yes. I do use screens. Of course. Otherwise I wouldn't be able to see what's happening on my PC. It's so stupid that these things use the same words. It's so confusing. I mean, yeah, I get it, but you at the end of the day, for both of them, you are monitoring something, right? You are looking or trying to observe, to make measurement of something. And that is what the word monitors indicates in both for screens and I guess mainly for the studio monitors, in that it's not just a speaker. It is trying to give you a flat representation of something. It's trying to be measurable, I guess. People can so easily misunderstand these words. I mean, you can draw context clues. If I'm talking about anything related to audio and I say monitors, then you would probably be aware from the context that I'm talking about the speaker monitors and not the screen monitors. And in that case, if there is something that has to do with the screens, I'll like say out loud, or somebody will say out loud, in the context of audio, it's my screens instead of monitors. Because that's kind of the same thing. It can still be confusing for non-native speakers, but to be honest, I've never found myself, as a non-native speaker, I've never found myself in the issue of not being able to understand what the person meant when they said monitors, knowing kind of like the context. studio monitors, we should use studio speakers instead, so much easier. But it's wrong, because the functionality of a speaker is to let you listen to music. Like it usually adds some bass, it usually adds some treble. That is what a speaker does. A monitor, what you're saying, like, it's not a speaker. That is the important distinction that there is to make. A monitor is not a speaker because it has a different functionality. It's trying to be as flat as possible, and speakers are usually designed not to do that. So it's handy to have that kind of distinction in kind of like the studio language. Like, one engineer may say to another engineer, oh, I heard this problem in this track that we were working on, and then the other engineer can respond with, did you hear it on monitors or did you hear it on speakers, right? Because then it can be that the speakers influence that decision.
Why Reaper is the best DAW for mixing.
What DAW are you using? This is Reaper. It's a DAW specifically made for mixing purposes, or at least that's kind of like what it's designed for and tailored for, like studio recording and mixing as opposed to production. That being said, you can also produce in this, and it's just $60, and I believe you get free updates, including the next major version. So I believe this is Reaper 7.03, and I think this is the last version that I'm able to get, or the last major version. Like, if I wanted to upgrade to 8, I would need to buy it again, essentially. But in terms of business model, that is very nice, because it's a very cheap DAW, and it's super powerful. Like, it's probably, for mixing purposes, the most powerful DAW that there is, apart from maybe something like Pro Tools, which obviously is like an industry standard. The issue with Pro Tools is that people hate it. Because it's been coasting on its reputation as an industry standard, it has gotten complacent and it's not actually become much better over the years, whereas other DAWs do. Kind of like what is happening with Ableton and Bitwig. Why don't you use Ableton for mixing? There's a few reasons. I like to convert everything to audio files so that I don't fall back into production. That's why I don't mix in the production project. And when it comes to handling a lot of WAV files, Ableton doesn't really like it. At least it isn't as optimized for it as Reaper is. So I can basically continue adding plugins to this and do whatever kind of processing that I want, and this will never really struggle on my CPU. Whereas that's not the case with Ableton. So that's the reason why I feel like I need to use like Reaper for that. Like, I could probably just do my mixing in the production project, but I feel like doing the mixing here, it actually allows me to, because I export everything to normalized files and then re-import everything into Reaper, it forces me to re-establish the volume balance. And that means that I kind of need to re-evaluate everything. And again, I could do that in an Ableton project if it wasn't for the performance issues that I would have in that. Realistically, the only reason why I'm using Reaper is because Ableton has performance issues with WAV files. Just the way that they read it from the disk or whatever. I don't know exactly what the issue is. I've had projects in here that had like 250 audio tracks, 250 audio files of 10 minutes long. How long is in the beginning? It's like 10 minutes long, I think, the track, maybe a bit more. In the beginning is 11 minutes and 40 seconds. So you can imagine that is like gigabytes upon gigabytes of WAV files. And Reaper just runs it. It allows you to throw basically endless plugins on top of it. I never had any performance issues with like adding too many plugins or anything like that on top of that. So it's just a very nice workflow in when you're mixing, that you never have any issues with CPU crackling or stuff like that. That being said, needing to learn another DAW is annoying. It's another cost. It takes a bit of time to get used to it. It just takes a while, and now I've gotten used to it. I kind of like the workflow in here as well. I would never produce in here though, because it's, from everything that I've seen, it is a little bit on the slow side with production. And the main complaint that I have is that I don't like its automation system. I like Ableton's automation system a lot more. If you really want to mix well and stable, $60 invested in Reaper is the best choice. I've always said that. Reaper as a DAW, to be honest, I think everybody should have it. And they at least, not like a standard thing, maybe if you're not like a professional, that you don't do music full time, it's not a good idea to export every single project, export all of the stems, because that takes a lot of time, right? And the benefit at the end of the day, it is very small. Like, I could probably get to a very similar quality mix if I just put in a little bit more effort in my production mix. But that being said, I feel like I get to it quicker. And I think for normal people that just have it as a hobby, being forced to work with audio files and then trying to mix everything in when everything is like normalized and you have to reestablish everything, it does teach you how to listen for mixing. What do you think of FL Studio? I used to use it in the past. It's immensely powerful. Many people underestimate how powerful it is and how deep you can get with their linking controls, and the patcher is extremely powerful. The peak controller is extremely powerful. All of that stuff is very, very powerful. The only annoyance that I have with FL Studio, and the reason why I stopped using it, is because in order to do anything, you need to open up a new window. You need to open up a new interface. Even Reaper as a DAW, I have my mixer, I have my tracks, I have all of the volumes, I have everything that I need just in one interface. Ableton is even more like that, right? There's Ableton literally is just one screen, which is the arrangement window, and then the session window, which I never use, so I don't really care about that. The only thing that is like two screened in Ableton is piano roll versus effects. And even now in version 12, they fixed that. You can potentially have both of them on the screen at the same time. So there's never a moment where you're in Ableton like, oh, I need to open up a new interface. Whereas with FL Studio, any action you want to do, you have to go through like 3 different navigational menus to open up exactly what you want to do. Also, the fact that all of their stock effects open up as a floating window makes it again a little bit slower to work with, to go from effect to effect. And all of that kind of compounds in it just taking a little bit more time to get your ideas down in the DAW. But at the end of the day, it's a very capable DAW, and if you like the workflow, that's okay. It's not, I wouldn't suggest to anybody using FL Studio that they should switch because of FL Studio and because of the issues that I have with FL Studio in terms of their interface. It is just maybe something to consider. Reaper is probably the most advanced DAW that I know, and it's really great. Yes, I love it. I love it for just being able to mix in it and the way that it allows to do that. To be honest, most of these options, like anywhere you can right click and you can get like a very big list of options and different things. See like how many different right click things I can find here. Here there's another one. This is a different one again. Most of these options I'll probably never use, but it's just immensely powerful. And I like their routing system. I'm a big fan of their routing system in that to route audio, say that I wanted to route, can I quickly just do that? Say that I have plugin A and B. So we go to EQs for the example. Or not really EQ. Let's do on here the dynamics. Say that I want to compress alternative kick here, which is the channel that we're on. But I want to compress it so that it reacts, for example, only to the transient, right? And say that my dynamics plugin does not have a sidechain filter for this example. We say that we're using sidechain input here. What I can do in EQ8 is I can send this to tracks 3 and 4, which means that automatically this one over here is going to take the input from the track and not from the EQ. So right now I can change this over here. I'll see if I can quickly find, yeah, here we have some kicks. EQing the sidechain signal at this point. So you can hear that it's not actually affecting the main sound that we hear, but it's affecting what this compressor is listening at. So if I quickly lower this, you'll be able to see that in the little graph here. If I turn this off, you'll see that this graph changes. Right now, you can see that massive transient spike that we get from this massive boost in here. And you can see that the lower frequencies are no longer there. In the sidechain, it's just the little spike there. So that it's a very easy way with one track, apply like an effect to a sidechain signal. And this is really powerful. I really like that you're just quickly able to do that. I have the ROG laptop with 2 screens. So the bottom screen I use for the mixer and the upper screen I use for the main interface. I get that, but still in FL Studio, it feels like even like you have to have a pattern. You have to have the playlist. What else? Like every effect that you throw on it has its own window, whereas in Ableton that's not the case, right? An EQ just opens kind of like in the interface itself. It doesn't open up a new window. So for me, that compounds a lot, and a lot of the more advanced features also have that system. It used to be much worse. For example, inside of the old patcher, it used to be the case that anytime you had many plugins inside of a patcher, many effects inside of a patcher, that it would just be a list of the plugins in the interface, and you would need to scroll down until you would find the actual plugin that you were interested in editing. So anytime you would do something complex inside of patcher, it would be a hassle to actually do that. There's all of those small things that in the grand scheme of things, it looks like very little time, but over time it does add up to, you know, just slight annoyances. I also have another monitor attached, which I use for plugins. I mean, if you have the monitors, then I guess it is easy. For me, it's not really an option because I only have one monitor in front of me, and my other two monitors, my other two screens, I should say, are to the side because I have my actual monitors, the studio monitors, in the middle there. That being said, when I'm not streaming, I do detach the mixer here as well, and I have my mixer over on the side window where normally my OBS is. And then most of the time, the way that I add effects in that case is just through here. I just edit everything through here, and sometimes I look at the levels, and sometimes I do other things. But having the small mixer and the small interface, it's okay for streaming, but it's not optimal. I love the spawn feature in Reaper with 2 or more Reapers on the same system. I don't know what the spawn feature is. In Action List Spawn, where you can open an instance of Reaper so that you can run 2 copies of Reaper at the same time. Okay, spawn a new instance of Reaper. Is there a reason why you would want this to do, or why you would want to do this? Apart from just being able to like open 2 projects and maybe copy over a synth or some settings or something like that. By the way, fun fact, we talked about FL before. FL also has a system like that, in that you can host FL Studio in its entirety as a plugin in another DAW. I no longer have my like install of FL Studio, but it used to be the case that it would come with like a bridge plugin, a VSTi version or something like that, and you would be able to run FL Studio inside of Ableton, for example, and then when you press play inside of Ableton, the 2 timelines would sync up, and it would automatically carry over the like timeline information. So if you're starting to play from 1:13 inside of a DAW, FL Studio would also start to play from that point, and you can kind of work in 2 DAWs at the same time and kind of use FL Studio as a secondary DAW that is contained within the project file that you're working on. It was a very interesting feature. I never really used that. Even once I switched to Ableton, I just kind of went completely Ableton, and Ableton took completely over for me, as opposed to kind of lingering around in FL.
I like REAPER Mania.
Kenny, yes, he is great. His tutorials are great. Usually I like when I'm doing streaming and stuff, it's much easier and quicker to just quickly get like an article. But that doesn't always work. Whenever there's videos, his videos are very good for just quickly finding the right material. Exactly what you need. I guess there's better ways to do crossfades when there's just 2 files like this and I just want to add like a fade between them. Like ideally you would be able to, just like you are in Ableton, when the fade is like this, right, where you can drag like this, if you were to drag like this way, it would be nice as if at some point it starts to crossfade, because now it just stops the fade and you aren't able to fade from one file into the other. And I can't do that because I'm just splitting up the file. So there is like information on both sides. This file should be longer like that way, and this file should be longer that way.
When artists join my stream.
4i20, welcome. Nice to see you here, 4i20. Love your music. Is he big? I don't know. I don't know him personally. Is he a big guy? Oh yeah. Nice. Very cool. Welcome. It's just like that time we had Jillax join the stream, who was very nice as well. Kind of funny to see that those people also like to watch content and tutorials and like they enjoy learning stuff. Jillax is amazing. Yeah, he was very friendly. At the time I had a student who was like his biggest fan, but he wasn't watching the stream. So when I messaged him that night, he was like fanboying more than me even. Like it was, oh, that's so cool that he's there. I guess you know that. Once you get kind of big, that starts to happen, I guess, for anybody.
I love music and technology, and it's always good to learn more.
Yeah, I think what makes, or at least part of what makes an artist consistently, I guess, at the top of their genre. It's hard to say that because you cannot really quantify the quality of art in that way, but it kind of makes sense to talk about it that way, in the sense that what makes an artist always at the top of their game, I guess, is that they're constantly learning. And I'm always trying to do the same thing. Not always like catch every tutorial that any producer, any YouTuber puts out, but I always try to at least spend a little bit of time during the week just learning something.
Your packs and presets are amazing. Thank you for that great work.
Thank you. Thank you for your support.
I need to learn the sound of saturation.
I'll do a little bit saturation on this. I want it a bit grittier. I should learn more saturators or saturators. I sometimes say dumb things here, because I do have a lot of plugins, as you can see. This is years of collecting things and stuff like that. But I don't really have a good saturator, I think, that just works all around. Because M-saturator, I feel like it's not really giving me the sound that I want from it. On the other hand, I've had speakers for such a long time that it's hard for me to hear like those subtle saturation things still. I still need to train my ears for that very minute detail that you would need to learn. I made folders. That is probably a good idea. To be honest, I find myself, whenever I'm not like browsing for something, when I don't know what I want, I find myself just typing in what I want and I get to whatever I need very quickly. So I don't have an issue with this big of a plugin folder in here. Because usually I know exactly what I want to add to a track and I just type in the exact plugin that I need. Or if I need an EQ, I'll type in EQ and then make my choice or whatever. In this case, I do believe I have... Here comes the problem. What's it called again? Yeah, see, now this is where the issue starts. Plugin Alliance, I think. Yeah, black box here. This is a saturator. I should learn this one.
I'm happy staying in the box.
My hardware top 3 wishlist, black box, Pule Tech, and 2 distressors. To be honest, I have personally not had the feeling like, oh, I need to get some kind of hardware, some kind of compressor, some kind of thing, because I'm too scared of all of the maintenance that would come with that and all of the stuff that is around that. Of course, it would be nice to have like a studio with a desk that has just like 12 compressors that you can run things through, 4 different ways of saturating it, 8 different reverbs and all of that. But I feel like that's the same kind of rabbit hole that just modular stuff would be, right? If you get like a Eurorack or something like that. In that, once you get started with that, there's no way of getting out of that habit of continuously spending money on more stuff and needing to maintain everything and all of that stuff. On the other hand, I am very happy with the results that I'm getting just purely working in the box here.
I'm happy staying in the box as well.
Maybe something like a little synth or something like that would be nice. Like, I would probably be happy with a virus, but anything more than that maybe. Also because right now the interface that I have has 2 inputs. Eventually, once I get my MIDI cables that I need to buy, I can hook this one up to the interface, and then I can also get the audio from back there. You guys don't see it, but there's like a cable back here for audio, or back here as well, I think, like a line out or something. There's a way that I can use this as a sampler, so I can send MIDI to it and then get the audio back into Ableton when I'm producing. That would mean that I would have 1 input left. And even then, at some point, I would like to lose my old audio interface, because it's working fine now, because my microphone is still on my old audio interface. I might keep it that way completely, but that would mean that I would already be out of audio interfaces and I would not have any way to input the synth, I guess.
Autogain needs to be a standard.
There's actually some issues with stuff like autogain, but I wish that plugin developers would make more of an effort of balancing out stuff like saturation, and in this case, the turning on the air immediately boosted the volume as well. I wish that there was more autogain, like that was more of a standard, so that you can really hear what the effect is doing without having to spend a lot of time rebalancing everything.
I love HG Black Box.
It is very good, yeah. It's probably, I've underused it. I should use it more. I should just learn it. The last time I went to a professional studio, which was last July, the guy there said to me that I should be saturating stuff more. And he said like that is one of the big things that you'll probably hear yourself as well once you get monitors and once you spend a lot more time learning your monitors, that you're not saturating enough. And I do use a lot of saturation in my like production project, but not really in the mixing project. Yeah, I guess I should just use it more in mixing. I guess the main thing that I might need to do is saturating more in buses and maybe even the mix bus when I'm summing things together.
Doing an A/B test.
My favorite setting is a very subtle one, but you can stack on multiple buses and channels you open in it and engage the in-out and just put saturation around 30. Okay, I'll give that a try. Let's try like on the sequences just to test it out. We'll put it in a place where there's a bunch of sequences playing together. We'll just go black box here. In, out, 30% saturation. That's nice. That's exactly level matched now. Let's listen. See, I know I need to train my ears more on the saturation because I cannot really yet hear the difference. For you guys, it's probably not going to come through with all of the YouTube compression and all of that stuff. Let's do an A/B test, just for me. The way that I'm going to do that is I'm going to close my eyes, I'm going to hit this button a whole bunch of times, and then I'm going to see which one I like best, if I can even hear the difference. Yeah, we'll just do it on this part here that we've been listening to. So the goal is for me to not know whether it's engaged or disengaged, and then I should probably loop this. I'll just listen to see if I can find the one that I like most. Of course, I have to do it again because now I saw it. I do hear a slight difference in there. I did hear a slight difference. The way that I would describe it is it felt more, the sound, this sound over here, felt more like it was all glued together. I would almost describe it as more of like a compressed feeling. Like it was like just slightly gluing it together. Kind of like what you would get from an SSL compressor. Which, I mean, makes sense because both of them are non-linearities at the end of the day. So they kind of achieve a very similar thing. But that's how I found or not really found it. That's not the goal. But that's the setting that I liked most was the one that it was turned on, I guess, at the end. So the way that you do one of these tests, there's ways that you can do this with plugins, that you don't have to close your eyes or turn off your monitors or anything like that. But the way that I do it is I just click a whole bunch of times, like this, until I don't know whether it's on or off. And then with my eyes still closed, I listen and I just go through it a bunch of times like this until I find the setting that I like most, whether that be on or off. And then I just open my eyes and see whether I like it more with an effect or without an effect. If it sounds best, if you ask me. I would doubt if you guys would actually hear that big of a difference. Maybe. Maybe you guys actually hear that difference, but I think YouTube compression would kind of ruin those very subtle differences. I mean, at the end of the day, YouTube compression is on both with and without it. So maybe it kind of cancels out. Like, I don't know if this is such a detail that you won't be able to hear it. To be honest, I think, now thinking about it, not like tutorial makers, but more, you know, those people that like review plugins and stuff like that. I think once or twice I've heard them use it as an excuse for the lack of a plugin doing something. In the sense that they would say like, oh, this plugin does this and this and this. And then somebody in the comments will be like, oh, I don't hear it. And then as a response, they'll be like, oh, YouTube compression. So I don't want to too quickly go to that. Maybe you guys do hear something, maybe you don't hear something. To be honest, I don't know. At the end of the day, I don't hear YouTube compression in here because I am hearing directly my monitors. But I do feel like anytime I watch back my stream, it sounds a little bit like, especially in the high frequencies, it just sounds different in the high frequencies, right? You get that kind of digital, it's almost like aliasing, but it sounds a little bit different because there's also the lack of like above 10K, 16, something like that. I'm on iPad speaker, so I definitely can't tell at the moment. Yeah, that also factors in for you guys, what system you're listening on.
Do I do my own mastering?
Will this track be mastered by you, or do you send it to a mastering engineer? I'll master this track as well. I do like to do all of the whole production myself. I have sent 3 tracks to an engineer, but everything else that you hear from me has been start of production until mastering all done by me. And I'm actually very proud of that fact, and I would like to keep it that way. I like knowing that I am kind of the only person involved with making the music that I make, so that it's truly mine. Which, I mean, I guess for the mastering it's like the last 5%, so it doesn't really matter. But I like to think that I'm also capable enough to do mastering. At least knowing the theory. It's just training your ear that's the difficult part of that.
If you want to get the full masterclass, contact me for a discount.
On your masterclass, do you have an option to purchase the project file separately? As I've purchased your masterclass, but I should have purchased the whole thing. I don't have an option for just the project files. I don't even think I have those on my system anymore. What I do have is a $60 discount code that I can give you in private if you message me either on, preferably on Discord, but also if you send me an email, I'll see it as well. And then once you send me that, I'll just send you that code. That way you can get $60 off the full edition price, essentially meaning that you pay $60 for the project files and that stuff. You pay the difference, basically, between the video-only version and the full project. So after the stream, message me, preferably on or either on Discord or in email. Usually on Discord I just see it quicker, so that's why it's nicer. But then I'll send you in private that discount code, and you'll be able to get it. That's not just true for you, by the way, that's true for anybody who wants to get it. So this way I can put it in the Conversations with Projektor episode. If anybody wants to have the project files and they only purchase the video edition, just message me and I can send you a code quickly, and you can just get the thing that you want. Does Gumroad do messages? No, not private messages. What I can do on Gumroad is send out bulk emails to everybody, but I cannot do like private messages to you or anybody else. So you would have to go through either Discord or my email address, which should be on my YouTube about page if you want to go through email. To be honest, I prefer Discord because it's A, quicker, and B, I get a lot of emails. So I don't want my email address to be too out there for normal conversational kind of stuff. It should be only like real business emails. I sometimes get emails from people who send me like tracks for feedback, or they have a very simple question that can be answered in a comment or on Discord, stuff like that. It happens, but it's annoying when people use a business email not necessarily for business stuff.
Limiter recommendations.
What limiter would you recommend for mixing or mastering? To be honest, I don't have a proper limiter that I really like for just general workflow. For mixing, I would probably say the limiter X. Limiter X here. This one over here. I sometimes use these ones for TR5 as well, but I would not recommend any IK Multimedia stuff to anybody but my worst enemy. Maybe not even them, because IK Multimedia is a shit company. It's unfortunate that these plugins work very well, because as a company they are very, very shit. I don't like them. The limiter X is very good. It is mainly like a maximizer kind of thing. It's meant to be like driven a little bit as a limiter. You can kind of push it as hard as you want, because it really tries to adapt to what you have, or like its input signal. It tries not to distort anything, like a good limiter should, obviously. But that means that you cannot get the maximum loudness out of it that you would, for example, want for a dubstep track, or if you're making drum and bass or stuff like that. This limiter is not going to cut it. You cannot boost it high enough that you get to that 0 LUFS, or not 0, but like -6 LUFS target that you want. It's not meant for that. This is more like a classical limiter. You cannot push it hard enough to do very loud EDM. Even there, you would use the clip to zero method, but that's a different story. That being said, in mixing, I almost never use a limiter. I showed before the iKey multimedia ones. I might use that once per project. Like in a blue moon, like once every 3 projects maybe even. For my master limiter though, I do have a different plugin. I once was sponsored by Ursa DSP, and they provided me with Boost, which has been my mastering limiter ever since. This thing is great. It does all kinds of limiting. Oversample with true peak is a very good option. It has this focus knob, which is very, very interesting, really changes the characteristics of the limiter. This focuses the limiter more towards the stuff in between the transients, and this focuses the limiter fully on the transient. So now it's working like a classic brick wall limiter, and this is kind of just your input gain here. But if you set this percentage and you set this anything other than 0%, magic starts to happen in between the transients. And this is also one of those limiters that no matter how hard you push it, it will never truly distort, like the transients and stuff like that. That being said, you can push this one too hard as well, and then you get kind of wacky dynamics in that you'll hear that there's this unnatural washing effect after each transient, because then the transient will not get limited more, but the stuff right after that will kind of be pushed up to an unnatural high amount. But this is a very good plugin. This is my mastering limiter on every single track. It's kind of funny that they now get another recommendation out of that sponsorship. I don't think that was his goal, that I would be continuously using it as my main mastering limiter, but it's nice. And by the way, the guy who made it was also very helpful in some other things. I've had conversations with him after that as well about certain things with plugin development. I remember before or right after I came back from my big break, I think, right before I made my ultimate guide to kick and bass, the first one that I did, I made a video, I believe, on mid-side processing, and in that one he really helped me by walking me through mid-side matrices inside of like actual plugin code. So just overall the guy is really nice. So I don't care that I am now giving him another recommendation. He deserves it. The plugin is very good. It does exactly what it needs to do. It does exactly what it's advertised to do. But you can definitely push it too hard if you're not careful. It also has a little bit of but every limiter has this, the effect that you sometimes hear where if your kick and bass is playing on top of a synth up until here, it sounds the synth sounds very quiet, and then right here in this fill here, if the synth continues to play, which obviously sometimes you just want as a musical idea, what happens is that the kick and bass stops, you get a lot more space in the waveform, and any limiter will grab that space and just pull it up, right? So that's kind of like a general limiter effect, and Boost also has that problem, but that's something that you need to look out for. I've also noticed that sometimes with slow attack values in here, if you set like a very low attack, like this, the 40 millisecond ones, the first kick of every new drop has a lot more impact in its mid-range, because of the way that the sidetrans kick looks, it will kind of boost the first 40 milliseconds right after the transient this area over here. It will kind of take this area and boost it more than it would do for any other subsequent kick. So that's something that you would need to be careful about as well. I don't know if that's a boost thing or that maybe a limiter thing as well.
How I use reference tracks.
Do you refer to tracks when mixing? I don't reference tracks directly in the project, apart from my actual production mix, that I sometimes want to go back and just listen, like, have I improved a lot or not? What I like to do is listen to reference material, like before sessions, I should say. This morning, I listened to the 2023 set from Asterix at Boom Festival, and I listened to like the first hour and a half of it, I think. Maybe hour and 20 minutes-ish. And that's kind of how I train my ears. That's how I wake up my ears, almost. It's kind of like a professional sports player doing his morning wake-up routine to warm up all of the muscles that he tends to train and use during the day, kind of thing. That's how I look at it, as opposed to referencing directly in the project itself. Towards the end of the project, though, when it comes to, especially when it goes into the mastering stage, I do use references, yes. At that point, I start to reference and I see, like, is the balance exactly where it needs to be in terms of the lows, the mids, the highs, the kind of like 3 compartments of it. And for that, I use a plugin called True Balance here. And the way that I use it is I just have a whole bunch of reference tracks, and then I have whatever mix or thing that I'm mastering also rendered out as a track, and I just compare all of the graphs that it gives me over here. I don't run it through the actual plugin like live. I just reference with the graphs here just to see if the spectrum is the way that I want it to be.
How I let the mix rest for a while.
We are getting pretty close with the first mix down here finished. I'd like to finish that today. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take a quick break, and during the break I'll play the whole track so that you guys can get a little bit more context for the track. Then after that we have a few more, how many points? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 different things to do. And then I'll end the stream here for today, because with these mixing sessions I have to now let it rest for a bit, probably listen to it on my phone a little bit, listen to it not in a DAW context maybe once, and then I can do like the final tweaks of mixing and final stuff, which probably will happen somewhere towards the end of next week, maybe even the week after that. Once I get the first like initial idea of the mix down there, I needed to let it like stay a little bit.
I have mosquito problems.
It's that area over there. There's a mosquito here. 2 seconds, I need to kill it. I got it, but it also sounded like something fell off the wall, just on the inside of the wall. The walls here in this apartment aren't like very solid. They're the American style, like almost like paper. Not that bad, but I think something fell off on the inside.
But in your defense, it was a case of self-defense.
It was a case of self-defense. Yes, the mosquitoes have started to come back. I went to the local kind of like Chinese sell everything shop for those electronic vape things that you put in the wall, where you have the little packets, this stuff over here. I wanted to get myself some of this, but he did not have it yet because it wasn't yet mosquito season, according to him. But every year I heard that mosquitoes start coming earlier because of global warming, and they stay longer, so they become more and more and more annoying. So I need to get myself one of those like mosquito repellent things, and the vape things seem to work really well because my parents have them as well, and they don't have any issues with mosquitoes, at least in that bedroom where they have the thing installed. And that's really the annoying thing, right, when you're trying to sleep, because during the day, like, you move around so much and stuff like that, it doesn't really happen that they get you. At least not me, but during the night when I'm sleeping, it happens all the time that they bite me. So for that reason, I want to have it close to my bed so that I can sleep in peace. A blue light zapper works well. My parents have a blue light zapper as well, and they don't like that one. They don't think that one works. They have no issues with their vape, so I'm probably going to go for that.
Where I live now, there are almost no flies or mosquitoes.
I guess because I'm in like more south maybe than you in Italy. They come earlier. But I saw the first mosquito like a week ago now.
My viewers, Cobra Saga.
Near my house in Lelystad, a cobra escaped from a house, so we were advised to keep doors and windows closed. After 1 week, they still haven't found it. Oh wow, not sure why someone would want a cobra as pet. We once sold a house, and the people that came into the house built one of those. It's not really. It's like an aquarium, but for animals that live on land. And they had 2 iguanas, and we came back like a few years later just to like not really check on them, I guess, but just as like friends to visit, right, to see what they'd done with the house and stuff like that, because we had a pretty cool house at that time, and we were just curious, and we asked them like, oh, that's cool, iguanas, that's rare, why would you want those as pets? And they said like, oh, now that we have them, we don't really want them anymore, but we feel bad giving them away again. We're just kind of stuck with them. They're like a maintenance nightmare. Of course, just with any other pet, you cannot easily go on vacation, but there's no pet shelter that you can just bring iguanas to, right? Because they're specialized animals, they're specialized pets. So that was really funny hearing them say that. I'm like, at least make sure it's safe and they cannot escape. Yeah. I mean, that I think they wouldn't do it on purpose, but that would be a good idea to make sure that your animals don't escape in general, not even with snakes and iguanas and that stuff, but in general. I'm a huge coward when it comes to snakes, like extremely. I've never interacted with snakes, so I wouldn't be able to tell you. I don't think I would care like too much, because sometimes you see like those tourist attractions. We went to Marrakesh once, the capital of, or at least I think the capital, maybe one of the biggest cities of Morocco. And there they have a square where there's what they call snake charmers. That was cool, but we kind of walked around it and we didn't really interact with it. I don't think I would want to have one of those snakes that they like drape on your neck or something like that. But when they're like in public and they're doing the snake charming and stuff like that, I would walk up to it or something like that. I don't really care. I'm not like frightened of snakes or anything like that. Mostly I'm afraid it'll enter my house without me being aware of it. That's a different story. I could see that being annoying. I could see me being scared of that as well. Yeah, I wouldn't want to do that. They do it in India too. I mean, it was just like a tourist attraction. It's not like that's a thing that they do in Morocco. I guess the snake charming originally comes from places like India, right? At least that's what I associate it with. Yeah, with the flute kind of thing. They do it with the flute, but it's really the way that I know is it's the movement of the flute that they move against, not so much the music that you're playing with it. Like they'll see the end of the flute as, I don't know, something that they have to follow. So if you play and you just go up like this, then the snake will also rise with that. Or at least that's kind of how you can control it. I don't know exactly if it works like that, but from what I've seen, that's kind of what they do it with.
Now that's going to be it for today. I hope you guys enjoyed this one. If you want to support the channel, make sure to check out some more of my content. There will be 2 videos up on the screen right now for you to choose from. So I hope that you enjoy them and I hope to see you in the next one. Bye bye.